On a cold night in 1974, a writer and his wife checked into the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. The resort was on the brink of closing for the winter season, and the couple were the only guests staying at the hotel. The man, struggling with alcoholism and writer's block, noted the eerie sensation of their isolation. The man noticed something strange one night when a fire hose that had been hanging outside the room began unraveling itself. It started chasing the couple's 3-year-old son down the corridor, screaming and looking over his shoulder wide-eyed and terrified. The man was startled awake. It had all been a nightmare. He smoked a cigarette, sweating profusely, and reflected on the horrible images he'd just witnessed. That man was legendary author Stephen King, and it was in that same room that he began plotting one of the most famous horror books ever written. The Shining is a horror film. In 1909, entrepreneur Freeland Oscar F.O. Stanley built the Stanley Hotel. Designed as a 142-room resort for rich guests and their families. Stanley, the inventor of the photographic plate and the Stanley steamer motor car, moved to Colorado in 1903 in the hope that the sunshine and fresh air would help him recover from illness. When he arrived, he was frail and underweight. Yet, hotel workers claimed that his health was recovered after only one season. As a result, he was motivated to create the hotel and, quote, bring a level of elegance to the community. The hotel, located on a hill overlooking Estes Park, is a massive Georgian Revival estate with white paneling, red roofs, and Gothic-looking attic windows. The interior design includes tiny corridors with burgundy flowery carpets and a large staircase. The estate was exclusively accessible by invitation until it was sold in 1930 and converted into a full-service hotel. A trendy getaway for high society and Stanley and his family's pals. Even Harry Houdini once performed in the building's huge concert hall, which featured a trap door. Visitors would drink, play pool, and enjoy Stanley's famed whiskey bar. The stately hotel was formerly a popular hangout for the rich elite. During the summer months, members of the East Coast upper class frequently stayed at the hotel, enjoying parties, wine, music, and the immaculate fresh air of the Rocky Mountains. While the Stanley Hotel's early years were filled with joy and glitz, it soon garnered notoriety for several strange occurrences. Stephen King wasn't the only one who had strange occurrences in the motel. And the room he stayed in, 217, is said to be particularly haunted. This room is said to be haunted by Elizabeth Wilson, the hotel's first chief housekeeper. An explosion gravely injured her one evening in 1911 as she was lighting lanterns. According to other sources, the explosion threw her through the floor, leaving her with 2 shattered ankles. Ms. Wilson, despite surviving the disaster, continues to haunt the room. Visitors who have encountered Ms. Wilson's spirit remark that her acts are rather commonplace and sometimes beneficial. Some claim to have returned to their suite to discover their laundry perfectly folded and their amenities meticulously placed in the lavatory. It also indicates that Ms. Wilson's ghost is not fond of male guests and, as a product of her time, is fairly conservative. There have been tales of particularly unruly guests, notably men, being jabbed in the ribs in the middle of the night, as well as accounts of couples experiencing a cold presence between themselves and their spouse at night, pushing them apart. These reports have primarily come from unmarried couples. The old-fashioned phantom clearly disapproving of premarital relations. While Stephen King did not report any sightings of Ms. Wilson, he did claim to have seen a young boy in Suite 217 when he arrived. This would have been impossible, of course, seeing as the Kings were the only guests on the premises at the time. Founder F.O. Stanley died back in 1940 at age 91, but many say his spirit continues to roam throughout this old hotel. According to staff, his ghost is most often spotted in the hotel's billiard room and bar. Stanley's wife Flora has also been spotted throughout the hotel over the years, routinely hurdling the odd key or two on the piano in the music room. Room 401 is another haunted hotel location. This room is said to be haunted by the ghost of Lord Dunraven, a landowner in Estes Park about 20 years before the hotel was established. Numerous female guests who have stayed in this room have claimed having their hair touched, as well as feeling a phantom arm around their waist or shoulder, and the particularly unsettling sensation of a hand creeping up the backs of their legs. Guests have reported seeing ethereal children playing in the hallways and hearing running and laughing on the Stanley's fourth floor. Back in the day, the fourth level was where the nannies and children would spend their time, according to hotel guides. Room 428 also hosts its own phantom. Many guests report seeing the ghost of a cowboy while staying in this room. One couple claimed to have awoken to find the cowboy ghost pacing at the end of their bed. According to the couple, they kindly asked the cowboy to leave, which he did. But not before leaning over the woman as if he was about to kiss her. Other women who have stayed in room 428 say they've also woken up to find the cowboy leaning in for a kiss. One legend claims that the ghost belongs to a cowboy from the Old West who was hanged for murder. Room 407 is alleged to be haunted by a rather friendly and helpful ghost. Many guests report getting tucked in by some supernatural force while staying there. One boy said at night, he repeatedly kicked his covers off, only to have them continue to cover him back up. Elsewhere in the hotel, guests reported the ghostly apparition of a woman in a Victorian gown who apparently disapproved of modern dress and offered the guests some fashion advice. The property also includes a pet cemetery. And staff members claimed that the ghost of a cat and dog had been known to wander throughout the estate and around the hotel. Some believe that geological features contribute to the paranormal activities surrounding the hotel. There is actually an entire cave system below the building. Guides say that these caves contain a higher than average concentration of limestone and quartz which might draw the spirits to the property. Regardless of what causes the spooky circumstances, the Stanley Hotel is an undeniable evidence that something has been scaring guests of the resort for many years. Even comedian Jim Carrey once stayed in room 217 while filming Dumb and Dumber, was reportedly driven out of the hotel in the middle of the night and never returned. Of course, Stephen King was so inspired by his frightening dream that he wrote the novel which, quote, cemented his place as America's foremost horror writer, unquote. As claimed by a 1977 review in The Guardian. The book tells the story of a tormented alcoholic named Jack Torrance and his wife Wendy who move into the fictional Overlook Hotel in Colorado, along with their son Danny. Danny possesses a telepathic ability known as the Gleaming, which stirs up the supernatural underbelly of the remote hotel and puts in motion a series of frightening occurrences. The horrifying novella, which was widely acclaimed when it was released, was eventually turned into a feature film directed by Stanley Kubrick in 1980. The film, which is set in the fictional Overlook Hotel, also used a variety of locations, albeit none of it was shot at the Stanley. The outside of the Overlook Hotel was photographed at the Timberline Lodge in Oregon, and the interiors were shot at the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite National Park. The iconic opening scene was shot on the Going to the Sun Road in Montana's Glacier National Park. Kubrick changed the layout of the hotel and added a hedge labyrinth to the front of the property, which anyone familiar with the film will know from its terrifying climax. Because of the success of the film, the Stanley Hotel erected a hedge maze on its premises in 2015. In the film, Kubrick changed the supposedly haunted room 217 to 237. Despite these departures from the original, Kubrick's The Shining became one of the most influential films of all time. In addition, it is a cultural touchstone. Even nevertheless, Stephen King was not a fan, famously referring to the film as a Cadillac with no engine, unquote. He despised the adaptation so much that he went on to create his own TV miniseries based on it in 1997. This adaptation of the story was shot on site at the genuine Stanley Hotel. The renowned Stanley Hotel is without a doubt one of America's most popular haunted destinations. According to one paranormal investigator, Richard Estep, the Stanley has remained at the top of his list for haunting locales throughout his career, which has included the study of castles, dungeons, and many buildings older than the United States itself. He also mentions that the Stanley Hotel is unique in that, unlike other haunted buildings, not many people have really perished there. Estep believes that murder and death are not the only things that might cause a region to be haunted. People prefer to haunt places where they were particularly pleased during their lifetimes, according to Estep. I believe we're seeing visitors return because they adored our hotel. During its heyday, many of F.O. Stanley's friends and family gathered at the resort to honor his life and enjoy a quiet holiday. supporting Estep's opinion that the spirits haunting the place are much nicer than The Shining portrays them to be. To this day, the Stanley remains in business and is a successful tourist destination, given to its breathtaking panoramic views of the Rockies, its place in popular culture due to The Shining, and, of course, its eerie encounters. Its lively room can be reserved for about $500 per night, and guests may also choose to learn about the hotel's history and folklore on a variety of tours. And while the spirits who haunt the resort might be a tad friendlier than most, the question still remains: would you stay at the Stanley Hotel,